When we get on a plane, we just assume it's safe. And it is. But that incredible safety record wasn't a given. It was earned. And sometimes, tragically, it was earned through disaster. Today, we're going to look at the deadliest accident in aviation history, not just to see what went wrong, but to understand how the lessons learned that day made flying unbelievably safe for all of us. This is the moment everything changed. March 27th, 1977. On a foggy runway in the Canary Islands, two massive Boeing 747s collided. 583 people died. It's an almost unthinkable catastrophe, and it served as a brutal wake-up call for the entire aviation industry. They had to face some incredibly hard truths. And that's the real question, isn't it? How did this happen? Because this wasn't about one giant single mistake. It was a chain reaction, a cascade of tiny, seemingly small problems and miscommunications that all just happened to line up in the absolute worst way possible. So let's set the scene. Our story starts at Los Rodeos Airport in Tenerife. This was a small, regional airport, and on this particular day, it was pushed way, way beyond its limits. It was never built to handle what was about to happen. Okay, so picture this. You've got two fully loaded Boeing 747s. These are giants of the sky. We're talking KLM Flight 4805 and Pan Am Flight 1736. They are packed with passengers, and they're stuck on the same single active runway. And just to make things worse, a thick, soupy fog rolls in out of nowhere, cutting visibility down to almost nothing. The pilots, the air traffic controllers, they were all essentially flying blind, but on the ground. In modern accident investigations, they teach you that disasters are almost never caused by one single thing. It's usually a sequence, right? A series of dominoes that have to fall in just the right order. So let's break down the elements that created this perfect storm. First off, the airport was totally overwhelmed. A bomb threat at a nearby major airport forced dozens of huge planes to divert to tiny Tenerife. So, chaos. Then that fog rolls in. Now nobody can see anything. On top of that, the radios are strained. You have pilots in the tower talking over each other, which creates this loud, awful squealing sound that blocks out critical messages. But the final ingredient, that was the most dangerous of all, the language. People were using non-standard, casual phrases. And that ambiguity, well, it turned out to be absolutely fatal. So with all that chaos, the fog, the bad radio calls, it all boiled down to one single moment. One critical communication breakdown that sealed the fate of hundreds of people. This was the message that came from the KLM cockpit. Now, the pilot, Captain Van Zanten, was a superstar. He was one of KLM's top training captains. His face was literally on their magazine ads. This guy was the best of the best. He wasn't reckless, but he was under a ton of pressure, and the words he chose would end up having two completely different meanings. And here it is. This is the deadly gap in communication. The air traffic controller and the Pan Am crew, who are still on that same runway, remember, they heard that message as a statement of position. We are at the takeoff point, like we're here, waiting. But what the KLM captain meant was a declaration of action. We are now taking off. He was throttling up. In that tiny little bit of ambiguity, the KLM jet started hurtling down a foggy runway straight towards a plane it couldn't even see. The aftermath was just devastating. But the investigation that came next would completely rewrite the rules of flying and fundamentally change how the entire industry thinks about safety. What's so important here is that the goal of the investigation wasn't just to point fingers and blame the KLM captain. They looked deeper. They looked at the entire system, the procedures, the training, the whole culture in the cockpit. They asked, what allowed this to happen? And more importantly, how do we build a system so airtight that this can never, ever happen again? And this brings us to the incredible legacy of Tenerife. The changes that were born from this disaster are the very reason you and I can get on a plane today with such an amazing degree of confidence. Let's dig into what those changes actually were. The single biggest change, the one that revolutionized everything, was the creation of something called Crew Resource Management, or CRM. See, before Tenerife, the captain was basically king in the cockpit. His word was law, period. CRM threw that whole idea out the window. It created a team, a flat hierarchy, where a junior first officer isn't just allowed to question the captain if they see something wrong, they're required to. It's all about teamwork over authority. And CRM led to these very specific, concrete rule changes.
First, terminology became incredibly strict. Nobody says the word takeoff unless they are giving or receiving the one official clearance. Co-pilots were empowered to speak up, and this one's huge. Pilots now have to read back every key instruction to air traffic control to make sure everyone's on the same page. And of course, technology got better with ground radar to help see through the fog. Every single one of these rules is a direct response to a failure on that day.
So, did it work? Oh yeah, the results are just staggering. Back in the 1970s, the fatal accident rate was over 6 per million flights. Today, thanks to the systems put in place after tragedies like Tenerife, that number has dropped to almost 0. It was a lesson learned the hardest way imaginable, but it was learned. So I'll leave you with this thought. Aviation built an entire culture that treats every single mistake not as a reason to blame someone, but as a priceless opportunity to make the whole system stronger. It's this rigorous, blame-free approach to learning from failure. Just imagine what we could accomplish if we applied that same mindset to other critical fields like medicine or engineering. How many other tragedies could we prevent?